This is lesson 1.2, and in this lesson we're going to cover entering commands. AutoCAD is a very advanced and complex program with hundreds of commands. So even though we may not cover all of the commands, if you can think it up, AutoCAD can essentially do it. So what's particularly helpful is that AutoCAD, with each tool, comes up with an explanation of that tool if you sit your mouse cursor over it. So for example, if I place my mouse cursor over this rectangle, okay, it'll come up with a little explanation, and then it'll expand to a little bit larger of an explanation. So this is extremely helpful in exploring the program. So starting with AutoCAD 2012, when you start to type a command, AutoCAD will attempt to fill in the rest of the command, limiting your choices in the dynamic toolbar. So even if you don't know a command, you can guess, essentially. So for example, if I type in, let's say, L, okay, it's going to come up with a list of commands that contain L. And this is controlled, hit escape, by the dynamic input, which is located in your tool settings. So the structure for AutoCAD that AutoCAD allows for entering commands is several methods. Okay, first one is by clicking the toolbar button. Okay, so if I go up to my tools, okay, and I click on, let's say, rectangle, I can click on that, and I can define one point and another just by clicking. Okay, I can enter the command. So if I type in RECT, you know, and keep going, there's rectangle, and again I can use that command. Okay, or I can use an alias. So the alias, and this is a short form that you'll have to memorize with each tool, is if I type in REC, I can do the same thing. So a lot of the tools will have a shortened version of it, which is, you know, it's basically defined as its alias. Keep in mind, though, that even though our commands show up as caps, it's not case specific, so you don't have to click on the command line either. Okay, so you don't have to have caps on, and you don't have to type, you know, click into the command line in order to see, in order for AutoCAD to start recognizing that you're entering a command. It'll automatically recognize that once you start hitting the keyboard that you're entering a command. So for the most frequently used commands, it's recommended to learn the keyboard shortcuts, as this is going to significantly speed up the drawing process. So to start off with, we'll focus on the toolbar buttons and the shortcuts at the same time. So to activate an AutoCAD command, AutoCAD has three ways of commanding enter. Okay, so basically when you have a command, you type in the command and then you hit enter, and there's three ways of hitting enter in AutoCAD. One is by hitting the enter key, okay, on the keyboard. Two is by hitting the spacebar on the keyboard. So note with this option, because as we go further, we'll note why AutoCAD commands and entries do not contain spaces, and that's because that space means an enter. So if you have a compound command, one that contains multiple words, a lot of times it'll treat it as one word, or you might even see that there's an underscore, and that's because the space bar is actually enter. Okay, and that gets a little bit tricky sometimes. And then the other way is by right-clicking on the mouse. So navigating the model space. The next step in getting to know your way around the program is to understand how to navigate within the model space. So given the fact that everything we draw, okay, so this is model space and everything that we draw is at full scale, the model space in AutoCAD is virtually infinite. So we move around this area in mainly two ways, by panning and zooming. And this can all be done with the wheel of your mouse. By holding down the wheel, you'll see that the cursor changes to a hand with which you'll be able to drag the drawing, and this is the pan command. You can also type in the pan command and hit P and enter and have it do the same thing. Okay, and then to get out of a command, you hit escape. Okay, whenever you are not in a command, that's when you see the crosshairs. By scrolling up and down, you can zoom in and out of the drawing. Okay, by double-clicking on the center wheel, you zoom to the extents of the drawing, which is essentially all of the drawing elements, or as we'll refer to them as objects, within the model space. Drawing to scale. Since it will be required to produce drawings that are to scale, we will need to enter precise values into the program. So at this moment, here's a little bit of a background. The concept of drawing in AutoCAD is that we'll be drawing on what is known as a full scale. So for example, unlike when we're drawing by hand, where we need to calculate the length of a particular line at a certain scale in advance, for example, if you know that you're going to be drawing to a 1/4 inch or an 1/8 inch or that scale drawing, instead, in AutoCAD, you're able to enter the true length when you start drafting. Okay, the scaling happens when we set up the page layout at a later point in the process. So when we go to print it or to set it up on a sheet, as we'll see later on, that's when we assign our scale. So in order to be able to enter any precise value into the program, the first step is to set up the program accordingly. So to do that, we're going to type in the command units, okay, UNITS, and hit enter, or right-click or spacebar. In the pop-up window, change the value for the length from decimal to architectural. And the precision in the same area to 16th. You'll find that as you start to practice, there are certain precisions that are applied to specific drawings. 16th is pretty typical, and it's fine. By doing this, we're telling AutoCAD that we're entering all the values using architectural units, which are feet and inches. And then it has a precision where it's going to be precise down to the 16th of an inch. So then you hit enter or click OK to return back to the model space. Now the file is set up for us to start entering dimensions for the objects that we'll be drawing. Note that this setting is file-based, and will have to be repeated each time we open a new file. And you can see if your drawing is in the correct units by the coordinate display, which, depending on the version, may or may not show in the lower left-hand corner of the window. In this version, they've taken it out, okay? But you can always tell by going back to the units and seeing if it's architectural or not. If you start to draft and you start to enter in units automatically, and they're not in feet and inches, AutoCAD won't allow you to continue with the command.